Hey, I'm back. Elijah's just stirring because there's a lot of noise outside, and obviously my child comes first. Previous video, I was explaining what happens once social services want to sort of come in and investigate your life. Elijah's just done me a favour actually, because he's made me take a break and come back into this. So now I want to explain what do you do if you get the letter that you are asked to attend a child protection conference, and what is a child protection conference, okay? Now, basically, you will receive a letter, and that basically means they've got cause for concern, okay? And that could be anything. It could be something you've done. Now, if you have committed a crime against your child, then I would hope that the police have investigated and you have been arrested and you get charged for the events that you've done, and you're sitting in prison. Now, the majority of the time, this is just because of mental health concerns, or there's a little bit more than maybe children in need, and you'll be invited to a child protection conference, okay? Now, you'll be asked to attend about 15 minutes early. And what will happen is you will go along to wherever your social services department is held. Here in Portsmouth, it's at the council office. It's really, really ridiculous because it's smack bang in the middle of the main sort of council office, and it's quite impersonal, to be honest. So literally, you will arrive and you will be greeted by somebody called the chair. Now, the chair that we've got here is lovely. I adore her. She's a lovely woman. She will invite you in before anybody else attends. And there's what she'll do is she'll explain who's going to be there, what's going to happen, and she'll talk you through, or he will talk you through sort of the general process, but they won't explain this process to you, okay? They will just basically let you come in and get comfortable. Now, if you've got children, I urge you to get childcare for your children. Don't take your children to a child protection conference, and don't put yourself in a situation where you have to tell them that you need help with your children. So do your best to get the correct care. Now, that could literally be, you could go to a nursery, you can ask a nursery, obviously one of your friends or family, but attend on your own. And also, nothing's going to happen at this stage, okay? Nobody's going to be taking your children, okay? This is just a child protection conference. Now, there used to be reading time. They don't have reading time anymore. So prior to a child protection meeting even happening, you will receive all of the paperwork based on what's going to be in this meeting. They will give you an outline of why you're going to be in that meeting and what this meeting's about. And officially, you should also receive everybody else's reports. If you haven't, you can attend the meeting and you can say, I haven't received the reports. I wish to adjourn this child protection meeting in order to be able to read through all of the reports. Now, this is where a lot of people start saying they're lying, they're doing this and they're doing that, okay? I've sort of learned how these reports are written, and they're basically just skeleton arguments, okay? There's no meat to them, there's no things, it's just bullet points and things like that. And it will basically, the first report will read, and it will be the social worker, and the social worker will write that report based on everybody else's, okay? So as I've said, it's like the multi-agency. So as you go into a room, you'll go, and it can be really, really daunting, it can be really scary. And don't forget, the majority of people who come to social services are in a vulnerable situation. A lot of people don't have the confidence and self-esteem to go into these situations. You don't have to get dressed up, come as you are, come as your parent. Both parents will be invited. You're welcome to invite family members and friends with you. It's probably a good idea to have one. The other thing is you can ask for an advocate to attend with you. If you do believe that this meeting is going to basically take you below the threshold. So the threshold, this is more about court, but the threshold is it going to, the normal standard of living, and is anything in your life going to bring you below that? If you feel it is, whether it be mental health, then I would advise you to have a mental health worker with you. If you have been in a relationship that they class as domestic violence, I would advise you to have a domestic violence worker with you. If you have a medical issue, I would advise you to have that medical person with you, okay? And obviously adult social services, because what that does is that brings you above the threshold. So as you go into this meeting, nice little boardroom, the chair will seat pretty much at the middle. Always position yourself next to or opposite the chair with the social worker next to you. It shows that you're in a working relationship. If you alienate yourself to the top of the room, it shows that you're not going to work with them, okay? Always seat with the father or mother, whichever person you are, to show that you're going to work together. Whenever you're in these meetings, if you're there with both of the parents, always refer to them as our children, not mine, okay? It's ours. You're showing that you're working together. So you will have a police representative, and that police will bring anything that you've got on any police records. Now, that will also bring, if there's been a neighbourhood dispute, any criminal records. Now, if there's anything incorrect on these files, you can have them omitted, okay? And this is where people are going wrong. Information is being presented and they're not having it omitted. They're getting irate about information that's incorrect, okay? Just follow the process, get it omitted. So you'll have the chair, the social worker. The chair will have a scribe, and this will make you feel quite claustrophobic because there's a lot of people, okay? So the note taker will be in there, and they're pretty much the person who's taking notes. There's no recordings in there, but you can record. And again, and yes, this is coming from me, I would advise you, as I've said previously in the other video, to notify them that you're going to record. And if they don't allow you to, have a backup recording. Because if you do find yourself in court and they say something that wasn't said, then obviously you have the evidence to correct that. But always give them the opportunity to allow you to record. And if you double check, you are actually allowed, but they will tell you that you're not. So have that paperwork with you that shows that you can. And it'll obviously, if you do have any diagnoses under learning difficulties or mental health, then you are allowed to record for your own, especially if you're dyslexic. You're allowed to record for your own purpose, as long as you notify them that this isn't for social media, it isn't for anything else, it's just for your own personal ways of obviously going back and understanding what happened in the conference. Okay, so you've got the chair, you've got the chair's scribe, you've got your social worker, you will have a midwife if you are pregnant, and that will be the child protection midwife. There will be a health visitor in there if you have children under 5. The children's teacher or school representative will be invited. If you have previously been in prison or have a crime, then you'll have a probation officer there. If you have any drug or alcohol issues, then make sure you have your drug and alcohol worker there with you, okay? Now, what they will do is it used to be you had reading time. So literally everybody would sit down and they would read through the paperwork, and everybody would read that paperwork there and then. Now they get to read the paperwork prior. If any person submits a file that you haven't seen in that room, you have the right again to turn around and say, I haven't had a chance to read this. Could I please have this adjourned in order to be able to read this? Now, the paperwork that you receive prior, you have time to respond. And now this is where parents are going wrong, okay? Because there's no legal aid for in a child protection meeting anymore, okay? So solicitors don't attend child protection meetings. Solicitors only attend if it's in legal planning or if it's already gone to court. But if you have been invited to a child protection meeting, I would advise you to get hold of a solicitor very quickly, just in case, and they can advise you through this process. So literally, as soon as you receive all this paperwork, this is prior to the meeting, then you must respond, which means you must write down, and I always say on forced adoption, red if it's wrong, amber if it's a misunderstanding, and green if it's correct. If there's anything that's wrong in there, make sure you submit that, okay? And then you basically respond to that prior to attending the meeting. You don't want to do it in the meeting because people won't have time to digest that. You want to do it before the meeting. And officially you should have, I think it's about 2 weeks prior to a child protection meeting to be able to do this. If you don't respond, and it's not in paperwork, your voice pretty much doesn't matter, but they can actually address this within the meeting. Okay, so what they'll do is the chair will get a board and they will write down what their concerns are. Okay, so that concern may be that, okay, so when the removal happened with Elijah, apparently the way I reacted, I wasn't aware that actually whether or not it was affecting my son. My argument was they shouldn't have removed my son in the first place. And I've actually won that, by the way, with complaints, and I've now got it going to court for compensation for an unlawful removal, unlawful detainment, and assault on me and Elijah. So if they've got concerns, so let's use a relationship for a prime example. So they say to you, okay, we've got concerns that the police will attend your property because of a dispute between you and your partner, and now they want to know how you're going to deal with this solution. So they literally go all the way around the room and every person will bring what their concerns are. Stay calm. Stay calm. If you need time to think about what's going on, then just say, I need 5 minutes, okay? But this meeting will only last about 3 hours, I think it is, sometimes an hour and a half, 3 hours. They're pretty much about 3 hours. Make sure you've got some water with you. Make sure you've got a bit of snack with you. You can get quite emotional in these. Make sure you've got some tissues, and always refer to the chair. Always speak to the social worker. Always speak to the person who's speaking to you. It can be very, very, very easy to start getting attacking and getting upset with things that they're saying. And this is where you've got to learn to not take things personally. I know it's not easy, but if you get this wrong at this particular meeting, then you will find yourself in a 3-month process immediately, okay? If you've been invited to a child protection meeting, you are not on child protection, okay? This meeting is to assess whether or not you should be on a child protection plane. I can't think, it will come to me in a minute. And basically the outcome of this meeting is no concerns, so the matter's closed. And I had a friend of mine who rang me out of the blue and went, Kelly, you know about all this stuff, don't you? I've got to go to a child protection meeting. What do I do? And with her, it was the fact that she'd had an argument and got into a domestic violent relationship. So I advised her to very quickly ring up and get herself on the Freedom Programme absolutely immediately. So prior to her attending this meeting, she'd already done what they wanted her to do. So the matter was closed. Okay. No further meetings. Now, if they go through and there's no concerns, hallelujah, you know, biscuits and cakes and everybody gets to go home. If they have concerns, then they're going to want to know how you're going to address those concerns, okay? And you've got to be able to think on your feet and come up with solutions very quickly. Or actually bow your knee and say, I just don't know, how can you help me? And actually they're quite willing and they will sit there and they will actually help you if their budget sort of permits it, or if they know of services that can help. I mean, if you are highlighted that there are drug issues, then ask for the help with a drug rehabilitation officer. If you have some form of mental health, I don't really like all these labels, then ask for the correct help. The problem is you're in a time frame. This isn't going to shut down like instantly, and it's going to feel so suffocating. Okay, so what will basically happen is they will address these concerns and then they will go around the room at the end of it, and each of them will vote on what they feel is the thing. Now, read something called Milgram's conformity experiment, okay? And I know many social workers and midwives and health visitors who also state that they feel pressured to conform to whatever goes first. Now, the chair will address everybody. You will get a chance to respond in the meantime. they will ask the social worker first, and the social worker will either decide child protection, children in need. Now, what they won't tell you is there's one called Team Around the Child as well. So that means social services aren't involved, but you will work with the health visitor, and then you will just literally have a little bit of extra support from your health visitor. They don't tend to bring this one in because it's a lot of pressure onto the health visitor, but you do have that option. There is also circles of support. They won't bring that option into the room, but if you know about it, you can present it into the room. Okay, so if they go around and they all go child protection, you are pretty much on child protection, and that meeting will then close, and it will be reset for in 3 months. Okay, so it's 3 months. Now, in that 3 months, they will basically draw up a plan. Okay, so it might be that they want a psychological report done. It might be that they want you to attend a course. It might be that they want you to work with the social worker on a particular matter, and they will give you a lot of tick boxes on what they want you to achieve. Now, while you're on child protection, your life pretty much changes, because really you're not allowed to leave with your children with anybody unless social services ask. Don't begrudge this. Just say, oh, do you know what? That's absolutely amazing. That gives me a lot more protection, because now if I've got any concerns with anybody, I can come and ask you, can't I? Okay. So your child will be allocated a social worker during that period of time. That means that they have the rights to attend your property unannounced. I think it's 3 times during that time. I've never actually had them turn up unannounced. I have a pretty good relationship with them, to be honest. And actually, it's usually me ringing them saying, right, what's going on? Because I don't like anyone to just attend my property. And if you're Asperger's, actually, they're not allowed. They still sort of ring you and let you know. And then you have, I think you have, I've not double checked this for sure, but I think you have 3 or 4 meetings with them prior to the next one. And that will be, the social worker will come round, they'll ask you if you're okay, if you've got any needs, how the kids are doing. So, like I've said in the previous video, when a social worker attends your property, they're looking for particular things around your property. So, has your children got appropriate books? Are the DVDs that you're watching appropriate to your children's ages? Do they have the right amount of clothes? Do you have all of the needs for the children? Is your fridge full? And don't begrudge them to do this, okay? Begrudging them is just going to cause problems, okay? Now, there's no reason for your child to be without anything, because there's things called Free Cycle. You can get amazing stuff from charity shops these days. Gumtree, you can buy things really cheap on Gumtree. Nobody needs a massive big budget for anything. In fact, this entire flat was done off Free Cycle. Even that computer behind me is off Free Cycle. The sofa I'm sitting on is from Free Cycle. So I had nothing. Now, when I was first on child protection with when we came to Portsmouth after I'd been out campaigning, me and Dean arrived in a car. Okay, so homeless isn't going to have your children taken. All these things are not problems. Okay, you've got to work with the solutions. We came here homeless, okay, just in a car, and went into an interim property. So we were classed as homeless while we were dealing with all of this. So on our child protection meeting, it was for us to be allocated a home. That all happened. We all worked with that. It all happened. And I did a healthy relationships course, and that wasn't from my relationship, that was to help me work with social workers, because yes, I told them straight, you come through my door or you're going to come out with a bullet to your head. They worked with me, they understood, and they got where I was coming from, and they didn't really take it too offensive. They got that it was very hard for me to work with a social worker after having 2 of my kids taken. In fact, actually, the social workers, I do. I really love social services here. They're beautiful. They have had 2 paedophiles removed from there, but the ones that I've worked with have been really lovely. In fact, she quite enjoys coming around for a cuddle with the kids. She, if one of the social workers is off, she's like, yeah, me, can I go and check? I'll go and check on them. So Anyway, I was explaining what happens once you have been told you're going to be either on children in need or child protection. What they tend to do is child protection first, and then they'll drop you down to children in need, and then they'll say goodbye. And hopefully you've built a really lovely relationship with them. And if you have needed help with anything, then you've received that help. If it's false information, then hopefully you've had time to get that omitted through the freedom of request. You just got to calm down. This is why I tell people to stay out of all of the fear-mongering groups. It doesn't help. And in fact, it hinders you. So I just wouldn't go there. And you just get caught up in so much drama of other people's lives, other people's demons, other people's things, and most of them end up trolling you. And I'll tell you straight, most social workers are sat in there, and I know that to be true because I've spoken to them. They come and tell me about stuff going on in other groups, and come on, Kelly, these people really need to sort of calm down, and it isn't helping. In fact, I just had a conversation with somebody about the Manchester protest because one of my friends actually was working inside on this particular occasion and told me, what they were saying about the parents outside and the attitude that they had, that no wonder they haven't got their kids if that's how they're behaving. It's the same as when we had the Scott protest. Having parents turning up drunk and, drinking at a protest, that's not exactly the greatest representation for your kids, really, is it? Shouting and screaming that David Cameron is a paedophile is not true. So anyway, I'm rambling, and I've got a feeling Elijah's, it's because somebody's outside making a load of noise. So basically in that 3 months, work with that system, because at the end of the day, if you need the help, then get the help. If you are struggling with depression, then work with them and deal with your trauma and get the correct help. There's loads of organizations out there that can help you. Now, if you refuse to work with this system, they are going to bounce your ass into the court. Simple. Okay? If you constantly tell them that they are wrong, if you take no responsibility whatsoever, they are going to bounce your ass into court. And the reason that they're going to do that is because they're not experienced to make that decision, and nobody wants another baby P. And what they're doing is they're diffusing responsibility and they're putting it into the hands of the courts. And also sometimes it's just that they need a bigger budget for you. Okay, it might be that you genuinely do need support. It might be that your children may be autistic or have got some form of needs, and social services need to allocate another budget, which is why they will kick you over to the courts, because the judge has the power to authorize that indicative budget. Okay, I'm going to cut the video off in a minute and do courts in a minute. I just want to talk about the child protection sort of stage. It can feel very suffocating. You can be in your house constantly wondering, are they going to knock on the door? Should I be tidying this up? God, I've got to keep my house spotless. Social worker could turn up in a minute. And, you may feel like you resent them turning up and be quite alien with them. Now, what we did, and thanks to a friend of mine who actually knows this process, is when the social worker came down, we had nice little toys sat where we knew the social worker was going to sit, so he could interact with my children with the sort of things that we had round. I had their books out of the sort of age-appropriate books and things like that. And you want to talk to them about who your support system is. You want to talk to them, and if you don't have a support system, then talk to them about how you can start building a new support system. I came here not knowing anybody, so I didn't have a support system. And I told them straight, I didn't have a relationship with my mum. I was coming here to build it, and they were willing to offer me this. We also had the situation that I was going into hospital, and they offered me, to have a foster carer look after my children. We just had this conversation with my social worker this week, and I've told him straight, for as long as you've got paedophiles in your system, my children were never into your system. And even he admits it needs cleaning up, and it does. Now, once you're in this child protection frame, if you basically tick all the boxes, in 3 months' time, you will go along to another meeting. You'll hopefully have the same chair. There's a chance that you could, midwives and health visitors seem to be the issue. Midwives, you always tend to get a different midwife in there. Health visitor tends to stay the same. Social worker tends to stay the same. Now, the social worker who does your section 17 and your section 47 will be different to the social worker who does child protection. Okay, so you might be introduced to a new social worker. That social worker is only getting to know your paperwork, not you, which is why it's important that if anything is incorrect, you must submit an overlay paperwork that says what's right and what's wrong. It's important that you do that. Now, eventually, once I get my act together and I've got things, then hopefully I'll have all these different frameworks for people along the way. But for as long as people want to risk and endanger my children, I'm not willing to do anything. I'm doing this right now because I just don't want to shut parents down who really do need some help. Now, as long as everything goes okay, they'll drop you down to children in need. That again is, I think what you do is you then have a core assessment, and then what you'll do is you'll come together with those people who are involved. So in my case, there was no police matters, so the police dropped away. There was no probation, there was no drugs, there was no alcohol, there was no domestic violence. All that drops away, okay? So they've done all of that. So all I was working with is the social worker and the health visitor. I think we had the midwife when they come in because I was pregnant with Shiloh. And literally, it's just what's the problem and what's the solution? And am I working with the solutions? And is everybody getting on and everything's okay? Okay. Now, if they're doing a psychological report, they're doing a psychological report to see if there is anything that you need help with. But the main reason that they're doing a psychological report is, will you work with the system? That's all they want to know, is will you work with them? If you won't work with them, that's when they're coming in. Okay, if they've got such concerns that they can't safeguard your children and you are not willing to work with them and you're telling them to fuck off and all this sort of stuff, you're going to get your ass bounced into court. Okay, so I think I've pretty much covered that, haven't I? So basically, a child protection meeting is held under a section 47. So that means they've got some form of concerns for the welfare of your child. And basically, it's your job as a parent to convince them that there isn't, or if there is, what you're doing in order to get on with that, basically. Now, mine was shut down on the first meetings because I know how this process works. And if I want help, I've got a great support network who help me anyway. And I've got a great partner who's a great help. And he was considered my protective factor during the first ever assessments. Now, the system's slow, okay? So if there are concerns and you want to sort of access into the system, it can take some time. So this is where you've just got to work on yourself, okay? Go to the gym, go swimming, start building some friends and some networks. If you've got any concerns about somebody, go and speak to the social worker and say, look, can you help me with a Claire's Law or Sarah's Law? Can you help me check to see whether this person is able to look after my kids? If you've got any concerns with, somebody at school, you may be constantly trying to get them to understand your children's needs. Speak to your social worker about it. The great social workers out there, people, there really are. The system is what is failing, and this is why I want you to understand the process that you're in, so you can maneuver yourself through this minefield without actually causing the removal yourself. Okay, so parents can actually cause. Oh, okay. No, that's my friend who's just buzzing me on something else. So, and actually, this is a friend of mine as well who's also been through it. So, yeah, I'm rambling now, so I'm going to cut off and I'm going to go and talk about the court process in a minute. And I'm just going to go and check on my kids quickly. So just to wrap up quickly, the first video I spoke about what to do if somebody has made a call to social services, somebody's alerted some issues, what to do in the first 24 hours. Now, this video, I've talked about the child protection sort of conferences. It is really, really simple, really. Just remember the people. Do you remember when people talk to you about speaking in public. Just imagine them all naked. You know, just don't fear these people. And the only reason you're going to do so is if you're listening to all the fearmongers about how bad they are and they're doing all this and they're doing all that. But if you just look at them as genuine, normal people who care about children, and if you do have any concerns and they do make mistakes, and I'll talk to you about this in length on something else, there is the HCPC, and that is getting changed over, and it does work. I'm going to talk about the removal process in a minute and how you deal with that, and it does work. I have upheld complaints against the police. All it is just calming down and working with the process, and understand that sometimes things take time, and what you want done and dealt with and closed now isn't going to happen. Okay, you're in a process, and that process you've got to make work for you. Okay, so yeah, that's child protection for you, and that's pretty much children in need. It's the same thing. Children in need is a section 17, and child protection comes under a section 47. So anyway, I'm going to switch out. I'm going to quickly check on my kids, and then I'm going to tell you about removals, the court process, and I might leave it at that, and then I'm going to tell you how to get kids back. So I shall catch you later.